Welcome to All Things Food. I'm Sherilyn Berry, and we're going to talk a little bit about an interesting fruit or vegetable that maybe you have eaten or maybe you have not. And then we'll leave it open for questions. We're also going to talk about our pepper of the week. So if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand or put a question in the chat box. And then on Facebook, you can do Facebook Messenger. So without further ado, we're going to talk today about the lowly and oft maligned eggplant. So eggplants are something that I call the tofu of vegetables. These are not very popular in the U.S. Certain cuisines use these a lot, but often when I grow eggplants and try to give them away, people can only handle so many, and it's usually considerably fewer than they would take of, say, tomatoes or cucumbers or something like that. So these can be very delicious if cooked correctly, and there are so many correct ways to cook an eggplant, but also they can be really awful if you don't do these the right way. The reason we call this the tofu of vegetables is it doesn't really have a lot of flavor all on its own. But it does have the ability to absorb flavors from other things, all different kinds of flavors. So this is actually related to tomatoes. This is it's called the Solanaceae family, and that includes tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, tobacco, and eggplants. So this is the eggplant we all think of. This is called a black beauty. So it was developed in Europe, hundreds of years ago. And this is great if you want to, say, slice it thinly and then like roll it and stuff it, or you can slice it thinly and use it kind of like lasagna noodles. You can cut it, scoop it out and stuff it and bake it on its halves. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this eggplant, but actually there's a lot of genetic diversity in eggplants. Eggplants actually started in either Africa or India. Nobody's quite sure because they've been growing wild there for thousands and thousands of years. And people would go and pick the 1-inch fruits and cook them and eat them. But then they ended up primarily in South and East Asia. They started to develop them into larger and larger and different kinds of eggplants. So, and then they were spread all across the world after a while. Normally when people think of the Solanaceae family, they think of them starting in the Americas. The tomatoes, peppers, things like that started in the Americas, and that's absolutely true. But for this Solanaceae, this guy started in the other hemisphere. So let's talk about some other kinds of eggplants. This one is called an Ichiban eggplant, and it is a very delicious Asian eggplant. The European type eggplants tend to have a thicker skin on them. When I cook these, I actually peel them, because then when I chop them up and cook them, when you're chewing, you don't have that really chewy skin to chew on. So I usually take a little bit of the peel off when I work with these eggplants. But the long, thin eggplants of the Asian varieties tend to be more tender with much thinner skins, so they're easier to work with. I kind of prefer them. Another one that kind of follows this format is, I don't even have a name for this one. I'm not sure what this one was because we just started a bunch of plants and we ended up with a green one. But this one I picked out of the garden. These I picked out of the garden this morning. So, but it's another Asian variety with a thin skin, and it's delicious. By the way, if something calls for eggplant, you can use any of the eggplants, because it usually asks for poundage or chopped cups of something. You can absolutely use any kind of eggplants that you have in any recipe. So don't know the name of that one, wish I did. This one is an Italian variety called Rosa Bianca, really beautiful purple variety. Purple is rare in our diet. Purple and black is a rare pigment in our diet. And usually when you see black in something like black rice, it's usually anthocyanins. Same thing with purple. And anthocyanins are purple pigments that are very highly antioxidant, and they're rare in our diet. So if you get a chance to eat something purple like berries or red cabbage or anything, you know, purple kale, they say eat a rainbow, because it isn't just for the vitamins and minerals that you're looking for. You're also looking for those phytonutrients in the form of pigments. So, but I love this one. This one's really beautiful. It also has a thicker skin like the Black Beauty does, but the texture of it is like really hard. It's a very dense eggplant. Another one that's Italian that I picked really small to show you is this one. It actually gets bigger than this one, but I wanted to show you how beautiful it is. So I picked it as a baby, and first I picked all the ones that we had in the garden, and then I went to the grocery store and I found this one, and this is as big as it gets. So this is called, oh, I can't remember. It's an Italian one. It's listata. Ooh, I forget the name. Anyway, it means bright lights. That's what this one is, but it actually gets large. And this is a Dominican eggplant, and this is as big as it gets, about the size of an egg. Oh yeah, that's a great thing right there. Why do we call them eggplants? What is up with that? They don't even look like an egg. Well, actually, some of the first eggplants that were experienced by people who were speaking English language were actually white varieties that got about this big. So they either called them garden eggs or eggplants. And that's why we call them eggplants, even though there's this huge diversity. I mean, this looks nothing like an egg, unless it maybe an ostrich egg, I don't know. But that's why we end up calling it eggplant. But anyway, this one's an Italian variety, and this one is a Dominican variety. And I love it. There's also like some red and orange Turkish varieties that are amazing. Yeah, these are grown all over the world. So, you know, try them out. Ooh, here's another fun one. These are Thai eggplants. They're green, little Kermit guys. You can actually buy these under Kermit eggplants too, which is cute. But they have this neat kind of webbing on them, which is neat. Also very thin-skinned and lovely. And then I got this other variety that's a Jamaican eggplant. But the reason I bought it, it doesn't look that interesting. It's just a really small variety of eggplant. But I wanted to show you like the bumps on it and stuff. If you see this eggplant is not fresh. If you see brown spots on it, don't buy that eggplant. Especially if the eggplant look like this is a Giada one, and look, or a Rosa Bianca, and look how brown it is. Avoid these, because you know sometimes people will buy them in the grocery and they'll have like soft spots, or it'll start to turn brown. It's the most bitter eggplant at that point, and you don't want to eat it. So you know, you can give it to the chickens or toss it in your compost pile, but I would not eat that, or I wouldn't try to feed it to a child, because you'll scar them for life. These don't have that much taste to begin with, except bitter, if you let them get bitter like that. One of the ways to cook these so that they have, they're soft, and sometimes you're going to remove some of the bitterness of them, because some of them do have a slight bitter tinge to them around the seeds. What you can do is slice these, salt the slices, and let them kind of drain in a colander, and then rinse the salt off and use them, either you know, stew them or fry them, or this is how people make eggplant parmesan, is they slice this particular one, or this variety, they make like 1/2 inch slices of it, and then they salt those slices to pull the moisture out. Because if you're gonna coat it in a crumb and then fry it, if it's full of that water, it's just gonna seep it's gonna make like a soggy fried thing, and plus all that water is going to explode in your oil, and that's not good. You won't end up with a nice outcome. So if you're wanting to high heat cook it, I recommend salting it first to remove the extra moisture out of it, and the bitterness that's around the seeds. The bitterness is actually it's a nicotinoid, not a neonicotinoid, that's different. That's a pesticide, but a nicotinoid, which is shows you that it's related to tobacco. It's got this slight little bitterness around it. It's a chemical, so you can draw that out with salt. That's what I recommend. Oh, these grow really beautifully here. They grow at the same time of peppers, so sort of the natural ebb and flow in the Piedmont of North Carolina is in the beginning of the summer. You get like kind of like your cucumbers and beans and things like that, and then those things start to kind of ebb, and then that's when you get a big explosion of peppers and eggplants. Even though a lot of times they're planted at the same time, those things, the peppers and eggplants are the things that are just going off like crazy. Most of our tomatoes have crashed and burned already a month ago, but right now we have more eggplants and peppers than we know what to do with, which is really fantastic. They're very easy to grow. You put them in the ground here and they just keep going, 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 which is fantastic. Fortunately, in our region, the eggplants, they only really have one pest, and that's the flea beetle. So if you're looking at your leaves of your plant and it looks like there's a shotgun pattern on it, that's a flea beetle. They're a true bug, so they come and they suck the juices out of the underside of the leaf, and that kind of kills the leaf in that one little area, leaving a hole, and they do that all over the leaves. But they don't touch the fruit at all, so I don't even mess with them. I just let them do their thing. It's only when they start messing with my harvest that I feel like I need to do something about it. So eggplants are super duper easy to grow. They're really easy to grow. They're really easy to harvest from. But if you're going to harvest, make sure to definitely put some gloves on when you harvest, because they tend to, you won't see thorns on them, but you'll reach in to harvest and you get poked. It's like they bite you. Not really, but it feels like a bug bite when they get you. So make sure to glove up when you're harvesting eggplants. All of this is edible. The skin, the insides, the seeds, but you're going to remove this calyx. This part of the plant called a calyx, that's where the flower used to be attached. And then once it was pollinated, it would fall off and then it expands and grows into this. So this was like the bottom of the flower bud, basically, which I think is really interesting. Eggplants have beautiful purple flowers. Some of them actually have beautiful white flowers, but the majority of them have purple flowers with a yellow stamen, this little kind of reproductive part of the plant that comes out of there. And it has male and female parts in each one of the flowers. So just like tomatoes, if you want a really good harvest, just go by and tap on the flowers in the morning and they'll pollinate when you do that, and you get a much bigger harvest. Not that there's ever a lack of eggplants this time of year, but in order to get the biggest harvest, especially if you're growing for other people or a large family, or you have some that you want to donate, if you go out in the morning with your coffee, tap on all the flowers and you're good to go. And the reason that I say the morning is, I don't know if it's the same for eggplants as it is for tomatoes, but when we have those like really hot, humid times of the year, you want to try to pollinate things of this family, especially tomatoes, in the morning before it reaches like 90, 95 degrees, because at that time the pollen becomes sterile. So if you go out and tap on all the flowers in the morning with your cup of coffee in your hand or whatever, tea, whatever beverage you have in the morning, it's kind of nice to be outside first thing and see all your beautiful plants. And then once you tap the flowers, you'll start to see the plants growing, the fruit growing that you really want to harvest from. So that's really nice. Ways that these are cooked. So my favorite way to cook an eggplant is, so there's a dip called baba ganoush, which if you've ever had hummus or Mediterranean food, hummus is a paste made from garbanzo beans and tahini and lemon juice and salt and pepper, olive oil, real simple spread. Well, if you substitute the garbanzo beans and you use eggplant instead, that's basically baba ganoush. And it's very delicious. It really gets most of its flavor from like garlic and lemon and things like that. It doesn't actually have a lot of flavor on its own. And all you have to do is like roast it in the oven to get it soft. That's the easiest way to do it, is you can just take this, set it in the oven, and it'll get all like soft and puffy. And then you take it out, peel back this skin, and scoop it out. But my favorite way to do it, it's another dip, I can't remember the name, it's a Turkish name. It's been a while since I've made it. But you take this and you put it on an open fire. Or if you have a gas stove that has a flame, you can actually wrap this in foil and do it on foil on the top of your stove. But it's even better if you can do it over like a charcoal fire, because it gives it a smoky flavor. And then you do the same thing. You mix in the tahini, you mix in lemon juice, salt, pepper, garlic. You can do a little fresh parsley if you want some fresh herbs. Really easy, really delicious. But I recommend the larger varieties for that, because if you're roasting this guy or this little skinny guy, you're not really going to get a lot of flesh out of it. This is better for if you're doing like a curry or something like that. So eggplants are great for curries because they absorb moisture, they absorb flavors from other things. So Another great thing about these is they're very, very fibrous. So even though eggplants don't really have a lot of vitamins and minerals, you're getting a lot of phytonutrients from the peel, those antioxidants we were talking about, but they don't really have a lot of calories. They don't have a lot of vitamins and minerals, but they have a lot of bulk. So there's a ton of fiber in them. So if you're feeding a large family and you only have a little bit of meat, you can stretch it with eggplant. You know, have all your other vegetables in there, but throw some eggplant in. And if kids are new to eating it, just cut it up really small and put it in there. I mean, you could like stir it in chili, you could stir it into all kinds of things if you cut it really small. And what that's going to do is stretch the bulk of the meal. That's why a lot of people use it, not only for the texture, but also to stretch a meal and to make it kind of larger, fill more bellies. And like we've talked about in previous talks, the bulk, the fiber in fruits and vegetables lower our blood cholesterol and are indigestible to us. So you feel full, but you haven't taken in extra calories. So really great thing to add to your diet, the diversity of your diet. But you know, start eating these slow. If you are not familiar with cooking with or eating eggplants all the time, take something that you already like making and chop it up into small pieces and add it in, especially if it's a stew or a soup or something. It shouldn't be like the primary flavor in the dish because it doesn't have that much flavor. So find something really flavorful, throw it in there in small amounts, and especially if you're feeding it to kids, just a little bit at a time, because it does have a tiny bitter element to it, and that can be really off-putting for young kids. So, and never force a kid to sit down and finish their dinner. If you can keep them from having the ice cream, but don't force feed a kid, especially vegetables that'll scar them for life. That's my little public service announcement for the day. So why don't we for a moment talk about our chili of the week, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I picked these for you today from the garden. We still have so many to go. I'm gonna have to end up drying some of them for you because we have weeks and weeks of peppers. This is a poblano. So this is how we normally see poblanos in the grocery store. It's a beautiful pepper. Like, I never buy green peppers, but I will buy a poblano pepper because I feel like if I'm gonna buy a green pepper, I might as well buy one that's already had its color developed, its carotenoids developed. They taste better, they're sweeter. They have the carotenoids develop in them, so you get the benefit of it for your body. Carotenoids are another phytonutrient, they're a pigment. So this unripe pepper, these are great. They have way more flavor than traditional sweet green bell peppers, in my opinion. Sometimes they have a tiny bit of spice, but it's rare. These are usually sweet peppers that, to me, have way more pepper flavor. Like, they're more robust sweet pepper flavor than just a regular pepper. But I like to wait on when you get them, when you grow them in your garden, you can wait till they develop their carotenoids on the tree, and they taste even better than these. They're so delicious, but I've never been able to buy them like this. Sometimes you'll see like if you go to like a Latinx grocery store and they've got like cases and cases of these, you might find a couple that have turned red or are starting to turn red, and I always buy those because I think they taste so much more delicious. These are thin-skinned peppers, and you can stick these on an open flame or put them under your broiler, and they blacken their skin, and then you let them kind of steam for 15 minutes and peel them. And then it's very easy to split these and then pull the seeds out, and you can stuff them. This is a very like fancy, delicious, beautiful thing to serve. You know, people will do, my favorite dish is chiles en hojada, and it means chilies in nuts. And basically it's like a Mexican national dish that's stuffed with like meat, sausage, apples, what is it? Like dried fruits like apricots, things like that. Really, really flavorful with rice. And then there's a nut sauce that goes on top, and then pomegranate seeds are sprinkled on top of it. And it represents the Mexican national flag, which I think is really good. It's a very labor intensive dish, but you could do it way simpler and just put, rice and beans inside, or meat, or whatever you want, or you can blend them up into a soup. But if you slice these really thin, they're fabulous in salads. You can eat them raw or cooked. But again, the red is more my favorite. This is not a pasilla, by the way. People sometimes call these pasillas, and they're not. I'll bring you a pasilla. I have some growing in the garden. They're sweet peppers, but they're much thinner, and they turn kind of chocolate brown when they're ripe. So, okay. Well, that's all I wanted to say about these two in the same family vegetables. Why don't we open it up for questions? Let's talk about it.
Whoa, Sherilyn. So you have managed to hit upon two of my favorite foods today. So I am really hungry. Normally I'm a little hungry after, well, I'm a lot hungry after you finish, but I'm really hungry today.
I will bring you eggplants. I had no idea you were in love with them. I have so many. I will deliver them to your office.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm a vegetarian, so we love the tofu and the eggplants.
Yes.
So before we started, I paused my question because I want the whole audience to learn from my mistakes. So I tried to grow eggplant this year, and I apparently left it on the vine too long, and it was a green variety that turned yellow now, and it's sort of like a yellow color. I was waiting for it to turn purple like a typical American who doesn't know anything about eggplant. So the question is, what happened? Why did they turn yellow, and what's wrong with it now?
Okay, well, this was really cute because she was asking me this question right beforehand, and she decided to save it. She said that they won't ever turn they won't ever ripen. I'm waiting for them to ripen, but they just turned yellow. And I'm like, was it one of these? Because she got her plants from us. And I can't remember the name of this one, but it's a green variety. So whenever, and it's not like a tomato, even though they're related, when, like this guy here, even though he looks terrible, is the same variety as this guy. They're on the same plant. So as soon as these start to develop, even when they're this big, they're edible. And they'll look just like they're gonna look when they're all grown up. So like this one is called a little finger. It only gets this big. So even when it's like this big, you can harvest it. And that's why you sometimes have to know your variety, because somebody that's growing these might think it's this one and leave it on there, and it won't get any bigger, and it turns brown or yellow. And that's when it's bitter and it's no longer edible. So those ones that you have at your house most likely are very bitter. But don't worry, I'll make it up for you. I've got so many plants. I'll bring all the things. We'll make up for it. I don't know. At the beginning of COVID, we gave out plants left and right. I was not really good. Like, I had them labeled, but normally I'm like waxing poetic about all the different varieties. We didn't have a lot of time for that. I was just trying to get as many plants in the ground as possible for people. So next time I'll make sure you get a purple variety so you're able to tell what it is. Yeah, just here's another example. Like, this is a baby of one that gets this big, but see, right when it's born, it shows you what it's gonna look like. But this one only gets this big. So you have to know what variety you have. If you have them all like this and they all start to turn brown, oh my gosh, I gotta pick those. But don't worry, I'll make sure you have known varieties next year. You'll be able to know the exact size, and we'll fix it, we'll fix it.
Good lesson for me and any other new gardeners on the call. So thank you for that. I also had we haven't had any questions I have to apologize because today Facebook isn't working. So we don't have as many questions coming in, but I always have lots of questions. So until I see someone in the Zoom raise their hand, I'll keep asking Zoom friends. So I was also very interested that you said at the beginning that all of these eggplants can be used the same way in cooking. Mm-hmm. And then you brought out variety after variety. So I would just love to hear, is there any differentiation in the flavor and how they will impact the dishes that you make?
So, well, if you have, it's not likely that you're going to like get much out of stuffing that one because it's so little that if you like hollowed it out to stuff it, but really you could. It's not like, you have to always peel a certain kind or whatever. If you're going to chop it up and do a stew, it doesn't matter if it's this one or this one. But if you wanted to slice something really thin and, salt it so that it's pliable and then like stuff it and roll it, you're going to want something like this one because you're not going to get much of a roll out of that one. But otherwise, they're, for all intents and purposes, the same. They taste the same. They have the same element of bitterness. Because they don't have a huge, like taste profile anyway, there are some subtle differences, but normally when you're cooking eggplant, it absorbs all the flavor of something so fast, it's very hard to differentiate them in a dish. Unlike a tomato, where every tomato has an individual like flavor profile because they have so many more flavors in them than an eggplant does. So, all the acids and sweetness and, all of that. So that's kind of why. But yeah, you can absolutely exchange them, you know, one way or another. But, you know, because of this one, like if you're introducing eggplant to people, I definitely recommend like that smoked eggplant dip, because the texture, because this texture can be off-putting for people sometimes, if it's not cooked a certain way, or if it's like the dominant vegetable in a dish. Sometimes the sponginess can be off-putting. But if you make it into like basically like a dip that people could dip chips into, and it's got this smoky, delicious flavor with like garlic and fresh herbs, they'll be eating eggplant and not even know it. So, and then you can inform them, and then it kind of opens their world to eggplant as a class. Oh, also botanically, this is a berry, because it's it's a basically, you know, grows on a bush, and it has seeds that are lodged inside of like an edible pericarp. So it's botanically a berry. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So we have our first amazing question from the audience. So thank you. So eggplant parmigiana, or parmesan, or however you say it, is really just tomato sauce and cheese. There's no nutritional value from the eggplant. I'm shocked, is what we're hearing here.
But so, you get fiber. You get fiber. So yes, it's true. You know, but there's something to be said for like the beauty of something. You know, if you're not eating 8 pieces of the eggplant and you're eating like 3 or 4, you know, so if no one's ever had eggplant parmesan, you slice this bad boy, you know, you salt it so it pulls the moisture out, you rinse it, dab it off, and then you like, there's a standard breading procedure, 3 things, we could talk about it later. And then you fry it, and then you drain it. And then on top of it, if you're putting like, you know, a little bit of cheese and like, you know, some beautiful homemade sauce that was, you know, all tomatoes and stuff, you're getting nutrients. Don't worry. Have it with a salad, have some berries for dessert. You'll be fine. Start looking at the context of your meals rather than in individual ingredients or foods. If you're looking at, okay, so, you know, people feel real guilty if they go through drive-through or something. Well, if you eat good all the time, and then you take your kids for a Saturday treat Happy Meal or what have you, the context of their diet, that doesn't make that much of a difference. Drive-through every day, detrimental to your health. Drive-through once a week for the kids, you know, context. Yeah.
That's great. Any other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. I know there are questions. There's too much great information that was just shared. All right. Well, I guess we're out of questions, and we're almost out of time. So I get to still say my phrase. We're out of questions and almost out of time. Thank you so much, Sherilyn. This was a favorite of mine, I have to say. So thank you very much.
I will get a little basket of them ready for you and bring them into the office. Thank you everyone for coming, and I'll see you next week for All Things Food.
Bye.